The film opens with a sniper named Mike Stevens and his spotter Tommy laying on a hill. They have been assigned to assassinate a dangerous terrorist leader at a wedding. They see the target and Mike scopes in, but when he goes to shoot, the groom gets in the way. The terrorists then notice a glare from the sniper and begin to fire at them. The duo fires back then runs, but they are chased by the terrorists on vehicles. They hide, but a massive sandstorm rolls in and their operator tells them to walk to a village and they will extract them from there. Mike and Tommy walk through the open desert and their radio connection cuts in and out. They later spot some men digging in the sand but don't think anything of it. However, as they walk, Tommy steps on a landmine and a big explosion goes off. As Mike goes to run to him, he steps on another landmine too but doesn't lift his foot up. He looks at Tommy and discovers both of his legs have been completely blown off. Tommy screams in agony and asks for help, but Mike cannot move or he will suffer the same fate. Tommy tries to use the radio but is in so much pain that he can't. Mike realizes he needs to do something and gets ready to step off the mine. Tommy sees this, and he decides to kill himself to ensure that Mike doesn't blow himself up for his sake. Mike then screams and cries after realizing the sacrifice his friend has made. He manages to take a knee without removing his foot. As he feels the outline of the mine, he does not notice a man watching him from a distant hill. Mike then removes his shoelace and ties it to an axe. He uses this contraption to retrieve Tom's backpack and radio. He then calls his supervisor, who informs him he will have to hold out for a few days before they can rescue him. Some time passes and the sandstorm returns again. Mike covers his face and digs into the ground to remain steady in the strong winds. The storm eventually passes and he discovers that it blew Tommy's body right next to him. Mike covers his face with a hat, then retrieves some batteries from his vest, but sees his radio drifted away from him in the wind. Time passes and Mike becomes more exhausted. He fires his gun into the air to try and get help, but no one comes. He is so hopeless that he holds his pistol to his head, but he does not pull the trigger. Soon after, a man walks by and Mike warns him to stop moving, but he is no threat. The man speaks some English and approaches Mike and tells him he needs to move on. He takes his water bottle for him, and minutes later a young girl returns it full of water from the village. Night falls and Mike makes a small fire and looks at pictures of his girlfriend. He is so tired that he begins to hallucinate about his abusive father. He then hears something growling in the distance and loads his gun. He fires in the direction of the menacing sound and realizes it is a pack of wild dogs. They drag Tommy's body, then run away after triggering another nearby landmine. The next day, the local man returns and tells him he is lucky to be alive because wild dogs are very dangerous. He retrieves the radio for Mike, but it does not work, and Mike hallucinates and sees Tom's face. Later, he cuts open his shoe with a knife and drinks his urine and eats a scorpion. He begins to grow delirious from the heat and exhaustion, and he hears voices in his head. Mike then sees Tommy return to life and get up, and he tells Mike to stay strong, but it is just another hallucination. At night, he finally snaps out of it when the dogs return and trigger an explosion. He aims his gun at them again and fires into the darkness. One attacks and bites his arm, and he quickly kills it but realizes he is running out of ammo. The Tommy hallucination returns and tells Mike he is gonna have to maneuver off of the mine. He listens and steps off the mine and both of his legs are blown off. However, this too is all in his imagination, and he comes back to reality when another dog chomps down on his leg. Others attack and Mike struggles and almost loses his balance. When the sun rises, we see he has single-handedly killed all the wild gods with just his knife. His supervisor then radios him saying his rescue convoy is on the way and should arrive in another 17 hours. Mike cries though and says he won't last that long. Later, the nice local man returns and puts lotion on his wounds. He then explains that he too stepped on a mine and it took his leg, and he also lost his only daughter from one. He consoles Mike and says he has got to stay strong and move on, and maybe something good will come from it. The two embrace and the man leaves, and Mike realizes the girl he's been seeing is just a hallucination of the man's daughter. Hours later, Mike looks in the distance and sees a convoy of vehicles heading to his location. The imagined Tommy returns and says it is not a mirage but it is real. Mike thinks it's his rescuers, so he plans to light a flare to signal his location. However, as he goes to fire it, he begins to be shot at by men on a hill. He drops the flare and realizes terrorists have discovered him. Despite his exhaustion and delirium, Mike is able to pick up his sniper and take down the first attacker. He then scopes in on the second and eliminates him, but he is shot in the shoulder. With the last of his strength, he takes aim again and finishes off the last 3 terrorists on the hill. Mike then sees flashbacks of his dying mother and his girlfriend. He imagines his abusive father walking towards him and aims his pistol at him. He cries and puts the gun down and the two hug, which brings closure to Mike. When he returns to reality, he sees his rescue convoy driving in the distance. They don't see him though, and Mike wants to grab the flare but he cannot reach it. He realizes he needs to get to it, so he decides to take the villagers' advice and move on. Mike closes his eyes and slowly steps off the mine, and to his surprise it does not explode. He is shocked and falls to the ground. Then he begins to dig in the sand. He discovers that this whole time he has just been standing on a tin can with some toys inside it. When he stepped on it, it made a clicking noise, so he had just assumed it was a landmine. Mike rolls over and begins to sob and laugh as he sees the toy soldiers in the can. He shoots the flare and his rescuers see it in the distance. They arrive in bomb suits and rescue the exhausted Mike. Days later, Mike arrives home and his girlfriend Jenny is waiting for him at the airport. With the final scene, Mike approaches her and takes a knee to finally propose.